It was supposed to be a celebration. My 68th birthday. Balloons, cake, laughter, and family gathered under the roof my late husband and I had built together brick by brick. But if you've ever walked into a party and felt invisible in your own home, then you already know how that night began for me. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken and buttered rolls. My daughter-in-law, Linda, had arranged the food in shiny trays as if she were feeding guests at a hotel, not family in my kitchen. My son David was busy pouring wine, laughing too loudly, pretending he didn't notice me standing by the doorway. And my grandchildren, my flesh and blood, sat clustered at the table, glowing with youth and confidence, their faces bent over phones that seemed more important than the woman whose name was on the cake. "Happy birthday, Grandma," Jessica, the eldest, sang half-heartedly when I shuffled into the room. She didn't look up from her screen. 68. Wow. Practically useless now, right? She smirked, nudging her brother Ethan. The word useless hung in the air like a slap. Ethan laughed, echoing his sister. Yeah, useless. Except maybe for telling old stories nobody listens to. Laughter rippled around the table. Even Linda smiled faintly, though she tried to hide it behind her wineglass. David cleared his throat, but he didn't defend me. He just poured himself another drink. I smiled weakly, my hands tightening around the chair back. They thought I didn't hear, or maybe that I didn't matter. They had no idea. And before I go further, let me pause and ask you something. If you're listening to this story right now, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love knowing where my listeners are. It makes these family secrets feel a little less heavy when we share them together. I took my seat at the very end of the table. Not at the head where Robert, my husband, once Saturday, not even in the center. No, they had placed me at the far corner, almost like an afterthought, next to the sideboard, cluttered with unused napkins. From there, I watched the party unfold as if I were a guest in my own house. Jessica scrolled on her phone, showing Ethan a video that made them roar with laughter. Grace, the youngest at 17, cast me a guilty glance but said nothing. She had always been softer, quieter, maybe more aware of my feelings, but in that house, her voice was drowned out. Linda leaned over the table, her voice sharp with practicality. "David, we should think about downsizing soon. This house is too big for all of us, and your mother doesn't really need it anymore." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. Doesn't need it anymore. My home, my walls, my memories, my life. David shrugged, as if it were nothing. "We'll figure it out. It's just a matter of paperwork." Paperwork? That word nearly made me laugh. If only they knew what kind of paperwork was locked safely in the cedar chest upstairs. Jessica chimed in, her tone dripping with entitlement. "Exactly. I mean, it's not like Grandma can keep up with it forever. She's already, well, you know, useless." The laughter came again. It rolled over me like a cold tide. I didn't flinch, not then. You might think I should have spoken up, slammed my fist on the table, demanded respect. But sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. Let them think I was weak. Let them think I was fading. Wolves grow bold when they believe the shepherd has fallen asleep. I sat back, sipping water, while their voices buzzed about renovating and listing and splitting profits. I watched their greedy little smiles. My heart ached, yes, but not with fear, with a strange, simmering satisfaction. Because a week from that night, they would discover just how wrong they were. When the cake finally came, it had my name in frosting, but the candles were rushed, almost careless. Jessica giggled as Ethan snapped a picture. "Smile, Grandma. One last good birthday in this house, right?" I blew out the candles, all of them, every last flicker. And in my mind, I made a wish Robert would have been proud of. Let them laugh tonight, because soon they'll choke on it. After the guests left, I climbed the stairs alone, past the photographs of Robert in his army uniform and the children as babies. In the quiet of my room, I unlocked the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. My fingers brushed across the crisp, folded deed, the one with my name printed in bold letters. I smiled for the first time that day. "Useless?" I whispered into the dark. "Let's see what useless really means." That night, long after the laughter had faded and the last dirty plates were shoved into the dishwasher, I sat alone in the quiet of my living room. The walls still echoed with voices, but now only shadows kept me company. The taste of birthday cake lingered in my mouth like chalk. I closed my eyes and let memory pull me backward, to the years when this house was not just a roof but a dream. Robert and I bought this place in 1979. We were young then, younger than my David is now. The lawn was wild, the paint cracked, the floorboards groaned with every step. But when we walked through the front door, Robert looked at me with that stubborn spark in his eyes and said, "Ellie, I can fix it. For us, for the children we'll raise here." And fix it he did. Weekends spent hammering nails, nights spent sanding cabinets, mornings with the smell of fresh paint filling the air. I carried planks, scrubbed windows, packed lunches. Together we shaped these walls into a home. I remembered Christmases when stockings overflowed on the mantel. Birthday parties where David's friends filled the yard, their laughter ringing like bells. I remembered planting roses by the porch, Robert kneeling beside me, dirt on his hands, sunlight in his hair. This house was never just wood and brick. It was a record of love, of sacrifice, of every promise we kept to each other. And yet, here I was, at my own table, my name written in icing, and still they dared to call me useless. My grandchildren who had never scrubbed a floorboard, never patched a roof, never sat awake through storms praying the shingles would hold, looked at me and saw nothing but frailty. I wondered if Robert could see me now. I wondered if he would clench his jaw the way he always did when anger burned in him. He hated disrespect more than anything. "Ellie," he used to say, "people will only treat you the way you let them." That voice, still alive in my head, kept me from weeping. Grace peeked into the room then, her small frame outlined in the doorway. "Grandma?" she whispered. I looked up. Her brown eyes were softer than her siblings, filled not with mockery but with shame. "I'm sorry," she murmured, "about what Jessica and Ethan said. They didn't mean it." I smiled faintly. "Of course they meant it, sweetheart. But thank you for saying so." Grace hesitated. "You're not useless. You're the only one who listens to me." Her words stung more sweetly than the cruel laughter had earlier. I reached out and squeezed her hand. "Remember this, Grace. People show their hearts by how they treat those who seem powerless. But the powerless often have more power than anyone realizes." She frowned, not fully understanding, but nodded. Then she kissed my cheek and slipped away. Alone again, I turned my gaze to the mantel. A photo of Robert in his uniform sat there, the flag folded beside it from his service funeral. He'd been gone 10 years, but sometimes I swore I could hear him still moving about the house. His watch ticked quietly from the drawer upstairs, a rhythm that had survived him. "Robert," I whispered into the silence, "they think I'm done. They think I'm a burden. They don't know what we built together. They don't know the paper in the cedar chest." I rose slowly, joints aching, but with a determination that made me feel 20 again. Upstairs, I knelt before the cedar chest, the same one Robert had carved initials into on our 5th anniversary. My fingers found the key, slid it into the lock, and lifted the lid. There it was, the deed. Crisp, official, my name bold and undeniable. Eleanor Mitchell, sole owner. Robert had made sure of it before he passed. I traced the ink with trembling fingers. This wasn't just property. It was my shield. My answer to every cruel word they had thrown at me tonight. But even with that knowledge, my chest still ached. Because paper might prove my authority, but it could not erase the sting of my grandchildren's laughter. I thought back to little Jessica, age 5, running barefoot through the sprinklers, squealing with delight. To Ethan, curled in my lap while I read bedtime stories. They had once looked at me with love. When had that love soured into disdain? Was it society teaching them to see age as weakness? Or had David and Linda whispered behind closed doors, painting me as fragile and obsolete? The questions swirled like dust in an attic, unanswered but heavy. Still, one thing was certain. I would not let their cruelty define me. Robert had left me the deed because he knew the world could be unkind, even family. He had trusted me to hold the line, to protect what mattered, and protect it I would. I folded the deed back carefully and locked the chest. Standing, I felt taller, though my back still curved with years. A plan began to form, not of revenge, not yet, but of truth. The kind of truth that slices sharper than any blade. Undeniable, irrefutable, written in black and white. Let them laugh, I thought. Let them sneer and call me useless. In 1 week's time, they will see exactly who is useless and who is not. As I turned off the lights and slipped into bed, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. Not a frail old woman, not a burden, but a keeper of secrets, a guardian of legacies. And in the reflection, I almost thought I saw Robert standing behind me, smiling. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, turning the living room golden. But warmth didn't touch me. Not when the voices from last night still echoed. Useless. Doesn't need the house. Paperwork. By mid-morning, David and Linda had gathered in the kitchen. I lingered nearby, folding napkins more times than necessary, listening without appearing to listen. "This house is far too much," Linda said, her tone brisk. "The maintenance, the taxes, the size. It's ridiculous to keep it going for your mother. She'd be better off somewhere smaller, with staff to look after her. A nursing home would provide everything she needs." David grunted, pouring himself coffee. I know, I've been thinking the same, but Mom's stubborn. She'll resist." Linda set her cup down sharply. "Then we don't ask. We tell her. We're the ones managing everything now. Once we start the process, she'll have no choice." No choice. The words sent a chill through me. Jessica strolled in, hair damp from a shower, phone already in her hand. "Morning, Dad. Are we still talking about selling this place? Because honestly, I'm on board. Imagine what it'll fetch. Split 3 ways. Ethan and I could finally get out of this boring town. College money, apartment money, finally some freedom." Ethan followed, yawning. "Yeah, sell it. Grandma doesn't even use half the rooms. What's the point?" They spoke so casually, like the walls weren't built by Robert's calloused hands, like the floorboards didn't carry the weight of my family's first steps. I gripped the napkin until it wrinkled. Still, I stayed silent. Wolves reveal their bellies when they think prey won't fight back. Let them talk. Let them reveal every greedy thought. Grace slipped in quietly, her eyes darting to mine. She didn't join the conversation. She leaned against the counter, biting her lip, the way children do when they know the truth but fear the consequences of speaking it. Linda turned to her. "Grace, wouldn't you love a brand new bedroom in a city apartment? No more creaky stairs, no drafty windows." Grace shifted uncomfortably. I like it here." Jessica scoffed. "Of course you do. You're too attached to old things. But this isn't about sentiment. It's about practicality. Practicality." I almost laughed aloud. Selling memories, selling legacy, selling blood and sweat, all for practicality. That afternoon, David sat beside me in the living room, voice suddenly syrupy. "Mom," he began, "Linda and I have been thinking, this house is too much for you. You deserve somewhere easier, somewhere safe. We could help arrange a nice place with a garden, nurses, everything." I looked at him, my own son, speaking as though kindness dripped from his lips, when really it was greed he swallowed whole. I smiled faintly. "That's very thoughtful, David. I'll consider it." His relief was immediate. He patted my hand like one might pat a child's. "Good. That's all we ask. Just consider it." I turned away, my eyes falling on Robert's photograph above the mantel. My late husband's steady gaze seemed to meet mine, reminding me that the strength of a house was not just in its bricks, but in the will of the one who owned it. That night, while they laughed in the kitchen about realtors and market values, I climbed the stairs again to the cedar chest. My hand brushed the deed like it was a blade, my weapon, my shield. "Soon," I whispered. "Soon they will learn whose name truly matters." You see, this is the part of the story where patience becomes power. And if you're listening, you'll understand why I didn't scream, didn't argue, didn't fight them right then and there. Because sometimes silence builds the biggest stage. And the curtain was about to rise. 1 week later, they would call a family meeting. They would spread papers across the table, smug and certain. They would look at me like a burden. And that was when I would reveal the truth, whose name was printed, bold and undeniable, on the deed they thought they already owned. The Monday after the party, the house was quiet again. The grandchildren were back at school, David at his office, Linda running errands. Silence blanketed the rooms, broken only by the ticking of Robert's old wall clock. It was in that silence I found my strength. I laid the deed across the kitchen table. The crisp, official paper seemed to glow under the morning Sunday. My name, bold and certain. Eleanor Mitchell, sole owner. They had laughed at me, called me useless, assumed I was too frail, too old, too blind to notice their schemes. But this single sheet of paper proved otherwise. I called Carol Jennings, my lawyer. She'd been a friend since Robert passed, and she knew my family better than most. "Eleanor?" Her voice was warm. "I've been waiting for your call." I smiled faintly. "Then you know why I'm calling." "Yes," she said. "David came to me last year asking about transferring ownership of the house. I told him the truth that he has no rights. But I think he's still scheming." "Scheming is putting it lightly," I replied. "They want me gone. A nursing home, can you imagine?" "I can," she said, voice tightening. "But you don't have to worry. We'll make sure you stay protected." That afternoon, Carol came by. We sat together at the dining table where Jessica had laughed, where Ethan had smirked, where Linda had suggested I downsize. Carol examined the deed, nodding. "It's airtight." Robert was thorough. "No loopholes, no gray areas. This house is yours, Eleanor. No one can touch it without your consent." Relief washed over me, but not for long. "That may be true on paper," I said softly, "but in this house, respect has already been stolen. They see me as a burden. That's harder to fight than signatures." Carol leaned forward. "Then let's give them a lesson they won't forget." We began to craft a plan. Step 1. Let them speak freely. Let them reveal their greed. Silence is bait. Step 2. When the family gathers again, let them put their cards on the table, contracts, suggestions, demands. Step 3. Unveil the deed. Slowly, calmly. Let the weight of truth crush them. "And Eleanor," Carol added, "if you want to take it further, we can. You could move the deed into a living trust, or set conditions that prevent David or Linda from ever inheriting. The house could go to Grace, or even a charity." The idea made my lips curve. "Let's see how they behave first. Wolves deserve a chance to show their teeth before you muzzle them." That evening, Grace wandered into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. She hesitated, then asked, "Grandma, what did you and that lady talk about?" I dried my hands and studied her face. There was no cruelty in her eyes, only worry. "About the house," I answered. Her eyes widened. "Are you going to sell it?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to make sure the right people understand that." She bit her lip. "Jessica and Ethan. They don't get it. They just think money grows on trees. But I love this house. It's part of you. It's part of us." My chest tightened with warmth. "And that, Grace, is why you'll never be useless. You know the value of what cannot be replaced." She nodded, as if tucking my words away somewhere safe. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote in my journal, the same one I'd kept since Robert passed. "They believe I am powerless. They call me useless. They measure worth in dollars and deeds, not in memories and sacrifices. But next week, when they gather in this dining room again, they will learn. They will see the truth written in ink, and their laughter will turn to silence." I closed the journal and slid it back into the drawer, right beside Robert's watch. The tick of the second hand was steady, almost like applause. The next few days passed with a strange kind of calm. David kept making calls, whispering about realtors. Linda circled listings in the paper. Jessica dropped comments about new furniture for our new apartment. Ethan bragged to his friends that he'd soon have cash for a car. And through it all, I smiled. I poured tea. I nodded politely. I even let them believe they were convincing me. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't in shouting no. It's in letting someone believe they've already won right up until the moment they realize they've lost everything. By the end of the week, David announced it proudly. "We'll have a family meeting on Sunday. We'll talk through details, get Mom's signature, and start the process." Signature. That word almost made me laugh out loud. Little did they know, the only signature that mattered was already mine. Sunday arrived, carrying with it the kind of tension you can almost taste in the air. Clouds pressed low over the house, gray and heavy, like even the sky knew something was brewing. David showed up first, briefcase in hand, wearing the smug grin of a man convinced victory was already his. Linda followed, shuffling a stack of property listings in glossy print. Jessica and Ethan bounded in, glued to their phones, barely glancing in my direction. Grace lingered quietly near the hallway, watching, listening. I brewed tea, steady and slow, the kettle whistling like a warning no one else could hear. We gathered around the dining table, the very same table where a week ago I'd been called useless. I ran my hand along its oak surface, remembering Robert sanding it by hand decades ago. That table had heard laughter, arguments, and prayers. Today, it would hear something else. David cleared his throat. "All right, everyone. Let's get this moving. Mom, we've been thinking, and it's time to make some decisions about the house." I tilted my head, feigning confusion. "Decisions? Why, David, I thought the house was quite settled." His smile tightened. "It's too big for you, Mom. You can't keep up with the maintenance. The taxes, the upkeep, it's all too much." Linda jumped in, eyes shining with anticipation. "We found several lovely retirement communities. Smaller, cozier, you'd be safe, cared for." Jessica giggled. "And then we could finally remodel this place. I was thinking we knock down a wall, make it modern." Ethan smirked. "And I'd get a decent car. No more borrowing rides from my friends." Their words tumbled over one another, excuses, dreams, plans built on sand. Not one mention of me, not one thought of memories, roots, or sacrifices. Just greed dressed up in concern. I sipped my tea slowly, letting the bitterness roll over my tongue. "That's generous of you all," I said, voice deliberately frail. "But what would happen to the house? Who would—" David pounced. "We'd handle everything. The realtor says the market's hot. If we sell quickly, we'll have more than enough to cover your living arrangements. And with the rest—" His eyes flicked toward his children, and the unspoken truth gleamed in the silence. Jessica leaned forward, her tone syrupy. "Don't you want us to have good lives, Grandma? College? Apartments? Maybe even a vacation? Selling the house would help us all," Ethan added. "Yeah, Grandma, don't be selfish." Selfish. The word hit harder than useless. My hands trembled not with weakness, but with rage carefully disguised as fragility. I set my teacup down with deliberate slowness. "So you all believe selling is the best option?" David nodded firmly. "Yes, it's the smart choice." Linda placed a hand over mine, rehearsed sympathy in her smile. "You'll love it, Mom. No stress, no loneliness, just comfort, and the family will benefit too." I looked down at her hand, soft yet grasping, and thought of Robert's strong grip when he promised me I'd never be left behind. "Comfort," I whispered. "Yes, that sounds lovely." They exhaled in relief, believing I'd given in. That's when David pulled papers from his briefcase, crisp and ready. "Just some preliminary forms. Nothing binding. We'll need your signature to move forward, but it's all standard. I've already spoken with a realtor about listing. We could have offers within the month." Grace gasped quietly, but no one noticed. I lifted the papers, pretending to squint at the text. The words blurred deliberately as I let my hands shake. "Oh, my eyes aren't what they used to be. You'll have to explain this to me." David leaned in eagerly. "It just authorizes us to represent you in the sale. You won't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of it." "Take care of it," I repeated softly, almost like a prayer. Inside, though, I was smiling. Jessica bounced in her chair. "Grandma, once it's sold, can I redecorate my room at the new place? Maybe even have my own bathroom?" Ethan snorted. "You mean once you move into a dorm? I'm calling dibs on her room here." Linda shot them both a look, but her lips twitched in amusement. "Children, be respectful." Then, turning back to me, "But really, Mom, this is best for everyone. We promise." Promise. Another word used like a leash. I folded the papers carefully, sliding them back across the table. "Perhaps we should wait until next Sunday. Give me time to think." David frowned. "Mom, the market won't wait. We need to act quickly." "Quickly," I echoed. "Yes, I understand." Grace finally spoke up, her voice small but steady. "Maybe Grandma doesn't want to move. Maybe she's happy here." The room froze. 4 pairs of eyes turned on her, sharp as knives. Jessica scoffed. "Stay out of it, Grace. You're just a kid." Ethan sneered. "Yeah, nobody asked you." But I reached out, touching Grace's hand. "Thank you, dear. Your opinion matters." The flash of gratitude in her eyes told me she understood far more than she let on. The meeting dragged on, filled with persuasion disguised as love. I let them talk, let them dream, let them reveal just how little they valued me beyond my signature. When they finally left, smug and satisfied, I stood alone in the dining room, my hands pressed against the oak table, steady now, strong. They believed they had cornered me. They believed they'd won. But they hadn't seen the deed. They hadn't seen my plan. And when they did, their faces would not be smug. They would be pale, broken, silenced by the weight of truth. That night, I wrote in my journal, "They think I am selfish. They think I am blind. They think I will sign away my life with a shaky hand. But next Sunday, when they bring their papers again, I will bring mine. And the name they see will not be theirs. It will be mine. It has always been mine." The week crawled forward, every day thick with a silence that felt like thunder waiting to break. I could hear their plotting even when the house was empty. David's voice echoing down the hall, Linda's clipped tones on the phone, Jessica's laughter about new clothes, Ethan's mutterings about cars. They weren't planning for me. They were planning around me, like I was already gone. And so, I prepared. On Wednesday, I visited Carol Jennings again. She spread a series of documents across her office desk, each one sharp as a blade. "This," she explained, "is a certified copy of your deed. This," she tapped another paper, "is a notarized letter confirming sole ownership. And this," she slid forward a final folder, "is your trust agreement. It ensures the house can only pass according to your wishes, not David's, not Linda's." I ran my hand across the papers, the texture crisp beneath my fingertips. They weren't just documents, they were shields, weapons, a fortress in ink and law. "Do you want to take it further?" Carol asked gently. "You could disinherit them, or you could write conditions that tie their hands. It's your choice." I looked out the office window, watching a pair of sparrows dart between branches. "Not yet. Let them believe they've cornered me. When the truth comes, it will sting sharper than any punishment I could write." Carol nodded, her eyes gleaming with approval. "Then next Sunday will be very educational." Back at home, I staged my part carefully. I let the children see me fumbling with the kettle, moving slower up the stairs. I sighed often, loud enough for Linda to hear. Jessica smirked openly when she caught me pausing at the banister. Ethan muttered, "Useless," under his breath again, thinking I wouldn't hear. And I smiled. Every cruel word was another rope they wrapped around their own necks. Grace, on the other hand, grew quieter. She hovered near me in the evenings, bringing tea, asking if I needed help. Once, when the others were laughing in the living room, she whispered, "Grandma, don't let them push you." I squeezed her hand. "Oh, sweetheart, I won't." Her eyes widened at the certainty in my voice, and for the first time all week, I saw her relax. By Friday, the tension had thickened to the point of breaking. David cornered me in the kitchen, his voice low but urgent. "Mom, we need your decision. The realtor says houses in this neighborhood are flying off the market. If we delay, we could lose thousands." "Thousands," I repeated softly. "How dreadful." He mistook my sarcasm for confusion. "Exactly. We can't afford to wait." Linda chimed in from the doorway, sharp and precise. "We're not trying to rush you, Mom, but this is about security, about making sure you're cared for." Cared for. The words curdled in my ears. I straightened, letting my back uncurl just enough to remind them I wasn't as bent as they imagined. "Security is important." "Very well. Bring your papers on Sunday. We'll see." David's eyes lit up, triumphant. Linda exhaled with relief. Jessica clapped her hands, and Ethan grinned. Grace, though, looked at me from across the hall with a spark of suspicion. She saw the glimmer in my eyes. She knew something was coming. Saturday night, I laid out my plan. The deed, the trust, the notarized letter, all placed carefully in a leather folder Robert had once used for his business meetings. I polished the oak dining table until it shone. I brewed a pot of Robert's favorite black tea and set aside his old fountain pen. The stage was set, every detail prepared for the unveiling. I sat in Robert's chair, running my hand over the folder. "They think I'm powerless," I whispered into the quiet room. "But tomorrow, Robert, they'll know who you trusted, and they'll regret ever calling me useless." The clock chimed midnight, each strike like a drumbeat of war. Sunday morning dawned bright, sunlight spilling across the porch. The birds sang cheerfully, oblivious to the storm about to break inside these walls. The family arrived, dressed for victory. David wore his best suit. Linda carried a thick envelope. Jessica strutted in heels. Ethan wore a grin too wide for his face. Grace walked behind them, hesitant, her eyes searching mine. I gave her the faintest nod. She nodded back, relief flooding her face. We gathered again at the oak table. David placed his papers in the center like a dealer shuffling cards. Linda smoothed them out, Jessica leaned forward eagerly. Ethan practically bounced in his chair. I let them bask in their illusion a moment longer. David cleared his throat. Mom, we've drawn up the necessary documents. All you have to do is sign, and everything will be taken care of. Linda added, this is the best path forward, for everyone. Jessica chirped, and you'll love your new place, Grandma. Ethan muttered, finally. Their words blurred together, a chorus of entitlement. I laid my hand over Robert's leather folder. Well then, I said softly, if we're all to sign papers today, perhaps I should show you mine first. The chatter stilled. 4 pairs of greedy eyes narrowed. Grace held her breath. I slowly opened the folder, the official seal catching the sunlight like a flare. The room was heavy with anticipation. David's papers sat neatly in the middle of the table, crisp and waiting, like traps disguised as opportunities. But it was my folder, the leather one Robert had carried to every important meeting, that caught the light. I rested my hand on it as though it were nothing more than a keepsake, then lifted my chin. You've asked for my signature, I said slowly, but before we discuss yours, perhaps you should see what I already signed, long ago. Jessica leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Grandma, what is that? A story, I replied, one written on paper and sealed by law. Ethan rolled his eyes. Oh please, more of her journals? Linda hissed, Mother, this isn't the time for sentiment. We're discussing serious matters. I smiled, thin and sharp. So am I. I opened the folder. The embossed seal gleamed in the morning sunlight, the words clear and final. Deed of ownership. Sole holder, Eleanor Mitchell. The silence that followed was delicious. David was the first to speak, his voice strangled. What? What is this? The deed, I said calmly. The one your father signed years ago. The one that makes me the sole owner of this house. Linda's face drained of color. That can't be right. Robert, he said. Robert said many things, I interrupted. But what he did was make sure I would never be left vulnerable. He put everything in my name. Every brick, every board, every inch of land. It is mine. Jessica's mouth fell open. But that means… Yes, I said, looking directly at her. It means you have no claim. None of you do. Not now, not later. Ethan slammed his fist on the table. That's not fair. We need this house. We deserve it. Deserve? The word rolled off my tongue like venom. What exactly have you done to deserve it? Mock me? Call me useless? Plan to sell my life out from under me? His face burned crimson. Jessica shrank back, muttering, We didn't mean it. Grace whispered, almost to herself, But you did. David's composure cracked, his voice rising. Mom, you don't understand. This house is more than you can handle. The costs, the upkeep. I slid another paper across the table, a notarized letter from Carol. Handled. Taxes paid, maintenance arranged, legal protections in place. Your concern is unnecessary. Linda reached for the document, her hands trembling. But if you pass away, then it will pass according to my will, not yours. For the first time, I let my voice rise. You dare to sit at this table, Robert's table, where we shared meals, raised children, built a life, and call me useless? You dare to treat this house as if it were already yours? Let me remind you, this roof, these walls, this table, none of it belongs to you. It belongs to me. And as long as I draw breath, you will respect that. The room went silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hold its tick. Jessica's lip trembled. But Grandma, we thought. What you thought, I cut in, is that age equals weakness, that gray hair means surrender, that because I move slower, I must be blind. But you were wrong, dead wrong. Ethan muttered something under his breath. What was that? I snapped, my voice sharp enough to slice the air. He looked down at his hands. Silence. Grace, her eyes wide, finally spoke. I knew it. I knew you weren't helpless, Grandma. I softened then, just slightly. You saw what the others refused to see. And for that, you'll always have my trust. Her smile bloomed like sunlight breaking through clouds. David tried one last time, desperation creeping into his tone. Mom, please, we just wanted what's best for you. I leaned back, folding my hands neatly over the folder. No, David, you wanted what was best for you. There's a difference. The room fractured after that. Jessica stormed away in tears. Ethan stomped to his room muttering about injustice. Linda collapsed into a chair, whispering about everything ruined. David remained, pale and rigid, his eyes fixed on the deed, like it had betrayed him personally. "You've made a mistake," he said finally, his voice cold. "When you're gone, this house will cause nothing but division." I smiled. "Then perhaps that's a lesson you'll all have to live with. But for now, the division is clear. This house is mine, and my voice long ignored has spoken." Later that night, when the house was quiet again, Grace sat beside me on the porch swing. "They hate you now," she whispered. I looked at her, then at the stars overhead. Better to be hated for strength than pitied for weakness. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I'm glad you showed them." I patted her hand. "So am I, sweetheart. So am I." The air in the dining room never fully cleared after my revelation. Even after Jessica's tears dried and Ethan slammed his bedroom door, the silence between David, Linda, and me clung like smoke. The deed still sat on the table, undeniable, unshakable, like a verdict carved in stone. Linda broke first. "I can't believe this," she whispered, her hands trembling as she clutched her papers. "All this time, you had everything in your name?" I folded my hands. "Yes, Robert trusted me, Linda. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted me protected." David's face darkened. "He wanted you stubborn. He knew you'd never let go, even when it was time." I looked him square in the eye. "Or maybe he knew you'd try to take what wasn't yours." That struck deeper than any insult. David's jaw clenched. He gathered the unsigned papers and shoved them into his briefcase, muttering curses under his breath. "You've humiliated us, Mom," he snapped. "In front of the kids, no less. Do you think Jessica and Ethan will ever respect you again after this?" I smiled thinly. "Respect is earned, not demanded. They never respected me before. At least now, they'll remember why they should." Linda reached for his arm, her voice softer. "David, maybe we should just let it go." "Let it go?" he barked. "She's holding this house hostage. Our future, our inheritance, gone." Grace, who had been sitting quietly at the edge of the room, finally stood. Her voice wavered, but she didn't back down. "Maybe it's not supposed to be yours," she said, looking directly at her father. "Maybe Grandma gets to decide what happens to her own home." David spun toward her, shocked. "Grace, you don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly," she cut in. Her hands trembled, but her chin lifted high. "Jessica and Ethan laughed at Grandma. They called her useless. You treated her like a burden. But she's the one who kept this family together after Grandpa died. She's the one who made this house what it island. If anyone deserves it, it's her." Linda's eyes welled with tears at her daughter's words, but David's expression twisted into something colder. "You've poisoned her against us," he accused me. I leaned back in Robert's chair, my voice calm as steel. "No, Grace has eyes. She can see what the rest of you refuse to admit." Jessica crept back into the room then, mascara smudged, cheeks flushed. "Dad, are we still getting the house or not?" Her bluntness sliced through the tension. Grace groaned. I simply stared. David rubbed his temples, as though the weight of his own children's entitlement was finally pressing down on him. I stood, my voice filling the space with finality. "This house is mine. That much is no longer up for debate. But what happens after me?" I paused, letting the words sink in. "That will depend on how this family behaves from this day forward." All eyes turned toward me. "I have options," I continued. "I can leave it to charity. I can create a trust. Or I can give it to the one person who has shown me true respect. Do you understand?" Jessica paled. Ethan, lingering in the doorway, scowled. David's fists tightened. Linda swallowed hard, and Grace's eyes widened in stunned realization. "So you're threatening us," David said finally, his voice low. I met his glare without flinching. "No. I'm giving you a choice. You can continue to mock me, dismiss me, and scheme behind my back. Or you can start remembering that I am not useless. I am the owner of this home, the matriarch of this family, and I will not be erased." Grace's hand slipped into mine, a silent show of allegiance. Jessica's lip trembled. Ethan muttered something ugly under his breath. Linda bowed her head, ashamed. David stormed from the room, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Later that evening, the storm of words still echoed in the walls. Jessica sulked upstairs, Ethan slammed doors, David sat brooding on the porch with a drink. Only Linda lingered in the kitchen, where I poured myself a fresh cup of tea. "Mom," she said quietly, I didn't realize how far it had gone. I should have spoken up." I studied her carefully. She wasn't innocent, but at least she sounded sincere. "You still can," I said. "It's never too late to change." Her shoulders sagged. "Do you mean with you or with Grace?" "Both," I replied. But actions speak louder than promises. That night, as the house settled into uneasy silence, I sat at my desk with Robert's watch ticking beside me. I opened my journal and wrote. They wanted my signature. Instead, I gave them my voice. Tonight, the lines are drawn. Grace has chosen respect. David has chosen greed. The others waver in between. Next week, when the dust settles, I will decide who deserves my legacy. Until then, they can sit with the truth that the woman they called useless holds all the power. I closed the book and placed it back in the drawer. My decision wasn't final yet, but the choice was mine and mine alone. The week after the great reveal moved slowly, as if the house itself was holding its breath. David barely spoke to me, his pride wounded too deeply to form words. Linda busied herself with meaningless chores, cleaning already spotless counters, rearranging already perfect shelves. Jessica sulked, avoiding me altogether, while Ethan retreated into his video games, muttering every so often about how unfair life was. Only Grace lingered near me, quiet but steady, her presence like a lantern in a dark room. She didn't need to say much. A gentle touch on my arm, a shared glance at dinner, those small gestures reminded me that I was not truly alone. By Friday, I knew the moment had come. It wasn't enough to defend my place in this home. I had to decide what would happen after me. I had to make sure Robert's trust wasn't squandered by greedy hands. I asked everyone to gather in the dining room again on Sunday. The tension was palpable even before they sat down. David wore his stubbornness like armor. Linda looked tired, Jessica defensive, Ethan defiant. Grace sat quietly beside me, her hands folded in her lap. I placed a new folder on the table. Not Robert's old one, but a fresh binder with my handwriting across the front. Legacy. "I've given this family much to think about," I began, my voice calm but firm. "And I've thought, too, about Robert, about this house, about each of you." Jessica rolled her eyes. Ethan sighed loudly. David shifted in his chair. Only Grace leaned forward, attentive. I continued. "Last week, I showed you the deed. That was my way of saying, this house is not yours to take, it is mine. But today, I will tell you what comes next." David scoffed. Finally, some sense. I ignored him. "This home will remain mine as long as I live. That much is certain. But I've made arrangements for what happens afterward. I want no confusion, no schemes, no bitter fights. The decision has already been written." I opened the folder and slid the first page across the table. My lawyer's seal shone at the bottom. Linda gasped softly. David snatched the page, scanning it quickly. His face turned red. You put it in a trust?" "Yes," I said evenly. "A living trust. This house will pass not to all of you, but to one person. The one who has shown me respect, kindness, and loyalty." Jessica shot up from her chair. "It's me, isn't it? Grandma, I'm sorry about what I said. I didn't mean it." Ethan chimed in, desperate. "Yeah, me too. We were just joking. We love you, Grandma. Really." Their sudden sweetness tasted sour. I shook my head. "No, words after the fact cannot erase what you revealed when you thought I was weak. Respect is not a mask you put on when convenient. It is a habit, and you have shown none." Jessica burst into tears. Ethan crossed his arms, pouting like a child denied candy. Linda whispered, Then is it me? I'm your daughter-in-law. I've cared for this family for years." I turned to her, my gaze softening only slightly. "You followed David's lead. You laughed when they laughed. You stood silent when they mocked me. Silence, Linda, is its own betrayal." She looked down at her lap, ashamed. Finally, my eyes found Grace. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Grandma," she whispered. "Yes, Grace," I said, my voice steady as a stone. "It's you. This house will be yours. Not because of bloodline, not because of obligation, but because you have shown me what the others would not, to respect. You listened. You defended me when no one else dared." And Robert always believed the next generation should carry on with honor. You are that generation. Grace's lips parted in shock. But I don't deserve this. I reached for her hand. That humility is why you do. David exploded, his fist slamming the table. Unbelievable. You're cutting out your own son? Your grandchildren? I met his rage with calm. I am cutting out selfishness. I am cutting out cruelty. If you wanted this house, you should have earned it not by blood, but by behavior. Jessica sobbed louder. Ethan muttered curses. Linda pressed her face into her hands. Grace sat frozen, tears brimming in her eyes. Grandma, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of you, I promise. I squeezed her hand. I know you will. The room fractured after that. David stormed outside, shouting into his phone. Linda followed, pale and silent. Jessica ran upstairs, slamming her door. Ethan stomped away, muttering threats. Only Grace remained. She hugged me tightly, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Thank you, Grandma. I won't let you down. I whispered back, you already haven't. That night, I sat on the porch with the cool air brushing my cheeks. The stars glimmered above, silent witnesses to my decision. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace. Robert had left me this home to protect me. Now, I had used it to protect myself and to reward the one soul who had earned it. They called me useless, they plotted behind my back, but in the end, it was my voice, my choice, my hand on the deed, and they would never forget it. So that's my story. My family thought they could erase me, call me useless, and take everything I built with Robert. But they forgot one thing. Some widows bite back harder than anyone expects. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you forgive them? Or would you make the same choice I did, give your legacy only to the one who truly earned it? Comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to know your story. Don't forget to subscribe for more family drama and revenge stories.